Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. So you know how much I love introducing you to friends. I meet cool people through this program, but it's always special when the person I'm introducing you to, I also know. And that is the case with my writer friend, Dell Blackwater. Hey, Dell.
Hi, it's a pleasure and a privilege to know you, Karen. You came onto my radar because of True Grace. I'm also a writer of historical fiction, and I love the jazz era, and so I like sort of tuned into you because of that. But we've been able to become proper friends since, which is a wonderful thing.
It is. We're in a writing group together, which that is
Yes.
also so fun. So I'm anxious to dive right into your novel, Dead Egyptians, which of course isn't that a great title besides everything else? And Dell's going to show you the cover. You have to tell me, Dell was, besides being a world traveler, she is a board game and oh, look at that. Look at Dead Egyptians. Isn't that cool? She also is a board game and tarot deck designer. And I just had to ask you about that.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind. You had to do some deep diving to get there, so I applaud your research skills. My first three publishing credits were actually games, not books. So I started with tarot decks. I'm the creator of the Art Deco tarot. You would love that as a jazz era person. The Greek Oracle deck. And then I moved on to a musical board game called Playlist Wars. So this game really changed the way that I socialize and listen to music. It became like much bigger than a game. So basically, I was socially awkward when I was younger, and I landed this date with this guy that was very fashionable and had a very legendary taste in music. And I was really scared about what happens when we run out of conversation. Sure enough, 2 hours into the date, we ran out of conversation. And I'm like, oh man, your fear was completely rational and justified. What happens now? So I go, Playlist Wars? And he goes, is that a game? And I'm like, yes. So it started out as just him and I are going to share the speaker. I get a track, he gets a track, and no one person is dominating the soundtrack. As the months went on, it got developed into a full board game. So very quickly, spin the record, you get a genre of music, jazz, blues, punk, whatever. And then let's say you get pre-war jazz. And I decide I'm going to play My Man by Billie Holiday for 1 minute on the Bluetooth speaker. And then the point system is based on how people react to my choice. If there's no jazz fans in the room, I'm not going to get many points. So you're not choosing music for yourself. You're choosing music for the room. And the beauty of the game is like, let's say you've got a friend that's like only into really hardcore music, like metal, and Tool, like that's their wheelhouse. To watch them pick up show tunes and have to try to play show tunes for the group, it's priceless. And so I've never seen two games go the same way. And it's this beautiful, like organized chaos. I'm very proud of it. So thank you for asking.
You should be. That sounds so fun. So you've so been privileged to travel the world. That was the other thing they uncovered. Things that don't come up in a writing group. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. I'm a Russian American, first generation Russian American. So I grew up basically on a plane and in airports. Sometimes I was in the Midwest in the States, and sometimes I was in Russia. And this was pretty far back in time. So it was the Soviet Union in the 80s.
Mm.
I was born in 83, and I actually still have memories of the Soviet Union. I remember the bread lines and everything. So, of course, I'm extremely privileged to be the child of two worlds in that way. There's pros and cons. You don't really fit well into either world, right? I'm not Russian enough for them, and I'm not American enough over here. However, the other way to look at it is Russia was always really exciting and refreshing and dynamic, like big tears, big laughs, big parties, lots of stories. You're never bored in Russia. So I could appreciate the side of Russia that doesn't get talked about, because for me, it was
Mm.
refreshing to come from the Midwest and see that, as an outsider looking in. By contrast, when I come back to the States, yeah, it's not quite as exciting as Russia in the Midwest, where I live. However, Nintendo, Doritos, cheesy puffs, and perhaps more importantly, freedom of speech. The television and the films are much better here because people can make any film they want. In the 80s, especially, if you wanted to make a movie about kids smoking cigarettes and they found a body on the railroad tracks, you can do it because we have complete freedom of speech. Well, in the 80s, I should say, we had freedom of speech. So I got to appreciate the good parts of both worlds, and I'm sure it made me a much more interesting person.
So one of the places you did, so your book, Dead Egyptians, uh, did bring you to Egypt? You've been to Egypt?
Many times. Yes, of course.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with historical accuracy. Of course, I went to Egypt many times. The first time I went over was 2017, and people sort of braced me. They're like, oh, because I've been obsessed with Egypt since I was 7 years old. And so people were like, you're
Mm.
going to be disappointed. It's not going to be the same as it is in your head, right? You need to be ready for that. And I went over there and it was exactly the way it existed in my head.
Mm.
Um, and the surprises were good surprises, not bad surprises. Now, remember, because I'm well traveled, I'm not going to have reactions to, like, oh, this person doesn't have a lot of money. I've seen that. I've seen that all over the world. I'm not having those kinds of reactions to Egypt. I just feel like I'm home. And I
Mm.
was lucky enough to be able to visit 5 times. So the research that I did in Dead Egyptians, it happened online and through books.
Mhm.
And there was quite a lot of it. But then I did fact check myself on the ground because I don't want to, I want people to have the real Egypt and to know that they're getting the real thing.
That's powerful, isn't it? I was just at a conference last week, and a group of historical fiction writers were talking about research. And, can you really capture another country, another place if you've never been? And we had a really lively conversation about it, but everybody agreed that if you are able, go, go.
Naturally,
If you're,
naturally.
but not everybody is able.
Going to
So
Egypt was more important than writing Dead Egyptians. Like, I like to think of myself as a person that explains Egypt to the West, but on my deathbed, I'm just going to be in my memories of Egypt, not my memories of I went on a book tour.
wow, wow. So you've got everybody intrigued, Del. Tell us about the premise, the
Sure.
time period, and the setting of Dead Egyptians.
Thank you. So the book one opens in 1902. I wanted Aleister Crowley to be the antagonist in book one, and he was in Egypt in 1902, 3, and 4. And so the opening of the story was decided for me when I decided who was going to be featured in the book. I knew it was going to be a book where the ancient Egyptians were ghosts that were still around in a different era. I thought it was much more dynamic to have sort of snotty ancient Egyptians that are still hanging around dead-splaining things to the living, being like, oh my God, this is how you guys live? Look, it's okay. We're here. We can fix it. Let us help. Whatever. This is pathetic, but we can fix it. I thought that was much more dynamic than just I set a story in ancient Egypt. So, the premise of the series, there's going to be 7 books total, is that Egypt in the early 20th century, they need to kick out the British Empire. They also have to kick out the French and the Ottomans. At the moment when the story opens, 1902, this is probably considered an impossible task by the living Egyptians, by the dead Egyptians as well. Everybody's pretty demoralized because Egypt has been under foreign rule for 2,000 years. Nobody thinks this can be done. But, if you know your history, they did it. In 1922, Egypt was independent again after a very long fight. So I am telling the story of the birth of modern Egypt, which is great because it really bothers me when people stop talking about Egypt when Cleopatra loses Egypt to the Romans. It's like that's the last thing that ever happened. I'm like, no, 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 no. All these other things happened afterwards. So I love talking about modern Egypt, and naturally, I've thrown in the ghosts of ancient Egyptians, so I can talk about both Egypts at the same time. And then the heart of the story, if you will, is that my protagonist needs to master 7 spiritual truths to become immortal. And he's kind of he's young and he makes a lot of bad decisions in book 1. So this also seems like an impossible task when we open our story.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a great protagonist. I had the pleasure of reading book 2 in process, and he's just a wonderful protagonist. And Dell is so funny. She makes me laugh. I love reading her. She makes me laugh. And she has such amazing detail that you feel like you were right there in her setting. So, as you were working on your current work in progress and in the first book, what do you love about Albion? What, what kind of person is he? And what do you like about him the most?
Albion has a lot to offer the world. On a surface level, he's a very gifted person. He's a polyglot. He speaks many languages fluently. You learn in Dead Egyptians, it's because of reincarnation. He's lived many, many, many lives as many different races, right? He always reincarnates into the ruling class of Egypt, whoever that is at the time. So he was Egyptian first, then he would have been a Roman, then he would have been a Byzantine, and then an Arab. And now, because the British are in charge, he's British. So he is a polyglot. He is also psychic, of course, because he has to be able to see these dead Egyptians to gain their wisdom. And he is also a hedonist. He takes his pleasures very seriously. He's a fun guy, and he's not a snob. This is very important. He went to Cambridge, but he's not a snob. He's not a toff. He actually is a very kind person, and he will talk to anybody that wants to talk to him. So he's almost like he should be a saint already, right? Like he's a wonderful guy, but he has issues. One of his issues is guilt. And that's going to take serious work for him to conquer. And also he's a romantic. And one
Yes.
of the 7 truths, there's a love story, of course, because of course I want to write about love. And so there's a love story between him and a ghost, and you never really know if it can work long term. One of the 7 truths is you have to sacrifice the thing you love most in the world. In Albion's case, that's his lover. So he can't be immortal like his lover without sacrificing his lover.
Yeah, that's a hard road. Not to mention it's kind of hard to be the lover of a ghost, but
Anyway,
you
think of the social
know,
stigma.
believe in that. So you are this truly meticulous researcher. We talk about that a lot. There's your head is filled with so much wonderful, amazing history. Was there something that when you were either there on your 5 trips or while you were fact checking yourself online that you discovered that really just made you either laugh out loud or it surprised you or concerned you?
Sure. The two really interesting facts that I like to throw out. We'll start with the fun one. So, in the time of the Roman Empire, you know, Egyptians famously love cats. I don't know if
I
you're a
do.
cat person.
I do
Um,
like cats.
they revered cats in a way that we don't. Like they held them sacred. They took care of them. You know, they
Mm.
had their own temples and they had their own staff and things. So in the time of the Romans, paganism is fading. So a Roman soldier didn't understand the way that Egyptians work, and he killed a cat in the streets. And they killed him.
Wow.
That was how deep the reverence went for living things, not just cats, but for all living things. The fun part of the story is an illustration of how deep their reverence went, specifically for cats. In ancient Egypt, most cats all had the same name,
Oh.
Tamuit. Almost all cats were called Tamuit, which means the one who meows, which is cute. And
Mhm.
also, when you think about it, the reason they did that is because they didn't speak the language of the cats, and they felt that it was insulting to like give the cat a name because they didn't know the cat's real name, right?
Ah.
You'd have to speak
Mhm.
meow, so they would
Mhm.
just call them Meowser, basically, which is adorable.
So darn. And the cats maybe one day would tell them what their real name is. As you think about uh, 7 books, that's a daunting assignment.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, it's like perfect because you know where you're going. You know where you're going. As you think about your tackling this second book, was there anything that you find particularly challenging about, keeping the series going or um,
Yeah, I mean, following up a book is always a bear at the best of
mhm.
times. You know, having to summarize, there's so much information in book one. I threw so much at the reader. To try to summarize that is always challenging, but there were a couple little challenges unrelated. One was I can't write scary scenes at all. So I've got this mummy running around and it's not scary. So I sort of have just kind of accepted that it's funny, not scary, and that's just how it has to be. But the other challenge was book one got this like homophobic reaction. The love story is queer, and I didn't market book one as queer fiction because it's historical fantasy. When it came time, I was like, no, this is historical fantasy. Like it's a very well developed, huge world. It's not really a romance, it just has a romance.
In
So
it.
I didn't
Right.
touch that queer element early on in the marketing, and I thought that, you know, the world was ready for it because at the time we were living in like a very golden age of queer culture. Like there were queer main characters in mainstream shows like Game of Thrones and nobody was batting an eye, nobody was flinching. I'm like, okay, the world is ready, cool, here we go. um, then the reaction was surprising to me. People would set the book down when they realized the book was gay. They would leave a 1-star review, though they didn't finish the book. And they would be like, you have to tell people your book is gay. That's not cool. Um, and so with book two, I decided it's going to be 25% gayer because I like to respond by leaning in harder.
Yeah. Yes. When people throw evil at you,
Yeah.
lean in, lean in more.
Yeah, you
Ah,
can make lemonade or you can cry about it.
yes, yes. So as you think about your reading life, we're going to switch from your writing life to your reading life.
Mm.
Was there an author or a book that had a really big impact on you, either as a writer or just as a person?
Yeah, of course. The two that leap to mind, Oscar Wilde and E.M. Forster. When I was in high school, I decided to do this experiment where I found the oldest book in the library. I was really bored. And so I literally went around to every single book in the library. That's how bored I was. And I found the oldest looking one, I should say, the one that looked like it was an antique. And it was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Back when you could have books in libraries, real books in libraries. And it absolutely changed my life. Oscar Wilde had this beautiful balance where he actually was attacking society, but he was doing it so pleasantly and so charmingly and with such pizzazz that people were like, I know you're attacking us right now, but this is good. Don't ever stop. Now,
Yeah.
it didn't
Yeah.
end well for Oscar Wilde, but he had many, many good years in there before his downfall. So he was a huge influence. As far as my writing style goes, though, E.M. Forster is probably a much bigger influence on the
Mm,
writing style. So then you've got the Oscar Wildes of the world who are Victorians, who are very florid. You know, they're throwing as many words at you as they can. There's no commas, there's no paragraphs. It's just a page with no commas in it. And E.M. Forster is moving uh, literature towards a more naturalistic style. He's still very elegant. You're still absolutely in awe of the beautiful language and the mannerisms and this world that none of us occupy anymore. However, his dialogue is completely naturalistic. If he's in the mind of a brilliant Cambridge scholar, it's very Wildian. But if he's in the mind of somebody that feels out of place and comes from a different socioeconomic background, he writes for that person.
yeah.
So I loved that about him. And there's a lot of Forster in my work if you go looking for it, like
Yeah, that's
Cambridge
cool.
University, Trinity. It's not hard to find those Easter eggs.
And have you read something recently that you could recommend, that you could also recommend to our audience?
Absolutely. Uh, I am I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm reading a book called Getting It Right. And it is set in Harlem. It's a contemporary story about found family, which I love. Anybody who had a difficult childhood will embrace a found family. And these were three strangers, a trio that seemingly randomly came into each other's lives, but it doesn't matter how they found each other because they form a perfect balance. And you wrote it.
Don't pay her. I didn't pay her. Did not pay her to do this.
I didn't even get a gift card. But I just want to compliment you
Thank you.
because one thing that you do is you tackle difficult subjects, but you do it in a very nuanced and fair way. So, for example, for anyone who hasn't read your work, you can write about all of the awful things that men do to women, but you never vilify men. You never oversimplify the problem. You paint people as individuals, as very complex individuals. And, you know, for another example, you can point out the ways in which rich people are blind to the world without vilifying them, right? That's a thing you do magnificently. And I'm not saying that you diminish the seriousness of what you're trying to tackle. You absolutely tackle very serious things. However, it's always a page turner. It's always fair. You use humor. You never have to like set the book down and take a breath because your world is a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. That was kind of you. Thank you so much. So now that you've fallen in love with Dell, I hope so. Tell us how they can find you. Well, first of all, know that of course you can find dead Egyptians every place you buy and borrow books. And if you don't see it on the shelf, you walk right up to the front desk and you tell them that you want it. That really helps us all when
Um,
you do that. But how can they be in touch with you?
Thank you for that. Absolutely, it helps to order physical books in bookstores. That's huge. Leaving reviews is also a huge, huge help to
Yes.
us. So
Yes.
you can find my games on thegamecrafter.com. You can find me on dellblackwater.com. I'm also Del Blackwater author on Facebook and Dead Egyptians on Instagram.
So cool. I hope that, first of all, thank you so much, Dell.
Thank
It's
you.
always fun talking to you, always. And this was a really fun conversation. I hope all of you have enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed it, that you will be in touch. You will follow Dell. You'll follow her on Instagram. You'll follow her on Facebook. You'll go to her webpage. You will order her book because you want to have read the first one before the next one comes out so that you can
Mhm.
read the series, and that you will be in touch with her and tell her that you met her on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? You guys have a great week. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.